Good Wednesday, everyone, and welcome to this edition of Conversation Daily News. I'm your host, Cyrus Webb. Glad you all could join us once again. We, of course, have your news headlines coming up on this hump day. We have the Truth of the Day with Mary Ellen Ciganovich, and in today's Entertainment Spotlight, you're being part of my conversation with Owen Klein, the Vice President of Global Culinary Innovation of CKE Restaurants. We talk about the big thing that is the chicken sandwich craze in the United States. You don't want to miss it. Enjoy today's broadcast. For Conversation Daily News, I'm Cyrus Webb with your Wednesday headlines. In international news, Palestinians go on strike as Israel-Hamas fighting rages. Palestinians across Israel and the occupied territories went on strike in a rare collective protest Tuesday as Israeli missiles toppled a building in Gaza and militants in the Hamas-ruled territory fired dozens of rockets that killed 2 people. The demonstrations and ongoing violence came as moves toward a ceasefire appeared to be gaining more traction. U.S. officials said the Biden administration was privately encouraging Israel to wind down its bombardment of Gaza. Egyptian negotiators also were working to halt the fighting, and while they have not made progress in Israel, they were optimistic international pressure would force it to the table, according to an Egyptian diplomat who spoke to the Associated Press on condition of anonymity because he was discussing diplomatic efforts. The general strike was a sign that the war could widen again after a spasm of communal violence in Israel and protests across the occupied West Bank last week. Although the strike was peaceful in many places, with shops in Jerusalem, usually bustling old city, markets shuttered, violence erupted in cities in the West Bank. Hundreds of Palestinians burned tires in Ramallah and burned stones at an Israeli military checkpoint. Troops fired tear gas, and protesters picked up some of the canisters and threw them back. 3 protesters were killed and more than 140 wounded in clashes with Israeli troops in Bethlehem, Hebron, and other cities, according to the Palestinian Health Ministry. The Israeli army said 2 soldiers were wounded by gunshots to the legs. The strike was intended to protest the war and Israeli policies that many activists and some rights groups say constitute an overarching system of apartheid that denies Palestinian rights afforded to Jews. Israel rejects that characterization, saying its citizens have equal rights. It blames the war on Hamas, the Islamic militant group that controls Gaza, and accuses it of inciting violence. In national news, Congress okays bill to fight hate crimes versus Asian Americans. Congress approved legislation Tuesday intended to curtail a rising rise in hate crimes against Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, sending President Joe Biden a bipartisan denunciation of the spate of brutal attacks that have proliferated during coronavirus pandemic. The bill, which the House passed on a 364-62 vote, will expedite the review of hate crimes at the Justice Department and make grants available to help local law enforcement agencies improve their investigation, identification, and reporting of incidents driven by bias, which often go unreported. It previously passed the Senate 94-1 in April after lawmakers reached a compromise. Biden has said he will sign it. In more national news, prosecutor finds deputies justified in shooting of man. A North Carolina prosecutor said Tuesday that sheriff deputies were justified in fatally shooting Andrew Brown Jr. because the man struck a deputy with his car and nearly ran him over while ignoring commands to show his hands and get out of the vehicle. Deputy Attorney Andrew Womble said at a news conference that Brown used his car as a deadly weapon, causing a county deputy to believe it was necessary to use deadly force. Womble, who acknowledged Brown wasn't armed with guns or other weapons, said the deputies will face no criminal charges after he reviewed a state investigation of the shooting, which sparked weeks of protest. The county sheriff, Tommy Wooten, said in a video statement Tuesday afternoon that the deputies will keep their jobs but will be disciplined and retrained. Brown's family released a statement calling Womble's decision both an insult and a slap in the face. Attorneys for the family, who watched body camera footage, have said repeatedly that he was trying to drive away from deputies serving drug-related warrants and pose no threat. And finally, in entertainment news, the blockbuster movie makes a comeback this summer. After more than a year of binging its biggest spectacles, Hollywood is ready to dazzle again. From F9 and Into the Heights to the Suicide Squad and Black Widow, there will be a steady stream of blockbusters populating multiplexes around the country for the first time since March of 2020. For streaming-weary audiences, the promise of air conditioning, popcorn, soda fountains, 60-foot screens, and state-of-the-art sound could be a welcome respite from the living room and virtual watch parties, not to mention the ever-romantic concept of the shared experience. For beleaguered movie theaters, it's not a moment too soon. The modern summer movie season, which runs from May through Labor Day, regularly accounts for about $4 billion in revenue and makes up around 40% of the year's grosses. Last year, summer earnings were $176 million, down 96% from 2019. Although theaters have been ramping up operations for a while, this summer will prove to be the biggest litmus test so far about whether habits have changed forever during the pandemic. Cyrus Webb, Conversations Daily News. It's now time for the Truth of the Day with Mary Ellen Ciganovich. Mary Ellen, it's all yours.
Hi, this is Mary Ellen with your Truth of the Day. Allow love to flourish and grow. All of us tend to romanticize the people we care about. We must recognize the perfection in the imperfection. When we look through rose-colored glasses, we view our loved ones, seeing the goodness in them. Do not ignore their faults or become blinded to mistakes, as these may be warning signs for your safety. You can appreciate them for the imperfect person they are, as you enjoy learning your life lessons along with them. We must all recognize the many varied characteristics that make each one of us unique. Wake up today to recognize the pleasure of knowing and loving someone just as they are. No judgments. Today, look at your loved ones and realize how breathtakingly beautiful they are and how grateful you are to have them in your life. Now go about to enjoy the day.
Owen Klein, the Vice President of Global Culinary Innovation for CKE Restaurants, is in today's Entertainment Spotlight, right here on Conversations Daily News. For Conversations Daily News, I'm Cyrus Webb with the Entertainment Spotlight. Owen Klein, the Vice President of Global Culinary Innovation for CKE Restaurants, joined me on Conversations Live, the radio show, to talk about the big sandwich craze going on in the country. Here's a bit of our conversation.
I have to admit, I'm a big chicken sandwich lover myself. I'm not a big beef guy, and I know a lot of my audience here in the South are going to really love this segment. These numbers are really impressive when it comes to the popularity for chicken sandwiches, but how did the chicken sandwich, Owen, become America's favorite food these days?
You know, there's really nothing more satisfying than a crispy, juicy piece of fried chicken. Our customers have been telling us that for years, and we don't see that craze going away, especially as Americans have leaned into comfort food much more over the past year plus with the pandemic. So only makes sense to ride that wave.
Yeah, and it is a wave that so many people are jumping on, Owen, which means that people have to be able to set themselves apart, and CKE Restaurants has definitely been able to do that. Why do you put so much emphasis on the culinary innovation of your sandwiches?
Yeah, so we've been delivering excitement, buzzworthy products to our guests for decades. Culinary innovation is woven into our DNA. From Carl's Western Bacon Cheeseburger in the 80s to a new line of turkey burgers nationwide for Hardee's and Carl's to even our CBD burger, first burger chain to launch a CBD burger on 420 two years ago. We've been delivering exciting products to our guests, both for their eyes and their palates.
Cyrus Webb, Conversations Daily News. We thank you all for tuning in to this edition of Conversations Daily News. We'll have you guys on tomorrow with more news, Truth of the Day with Mary Ellen Ciganovich, and of course your Entertainment Spotlight. Until then, I'm your host, Cyrus Webb, saying as always, enjoy your day, enjoy your life, enjoy your world. Thank you all for choosing Conversations Daily News today. Let's make it a great one.